Hello, all, and welcome to the Movie Bears podcast. I'm Brad Harris, and each week I'm joined by Husky, Harry, huggable homos who love film, to dish up a little bit of movie news and talk about films that are, either current, classic, somewhere in between. This week we definitely have a film squarely in the current category, and that, of course, is going to be Coco, the new animated CGI. Do you call it an animated film? I mean, it's
animated.
Yeah, I would say it's animated. It counts.
A computer
right?
animated it, but a computer may have animated it, but it's still animated.
Well, and
there's still people clicking the mouse.
well, even what things that we think of as traditional, like 2D animation, is mostly done via computer these days too. So
that's true.
So yeah, this is animated. It's in the animated category at the Oscars. You take your kids to go see an animated movie. It's animated.
Totally counts. So Coco, the new animated film from Disney Pixar, is up for discussion. For those of you who may be on the fence about Coco for some reason, A, you're crazy, go see it. That's my opinion, but we'll see what the other guys think here in a little bit.
Spoiler.
But B, it's not, well, okay, maybe. B, we are going to talk about the film spoiler-free, aside from apparently the spoiler about the podcast I just mentioned, before we dive into a super spoiler review. So if you're not sure if you want to see Coco or not, we'll give you our first thoughts, our impressions, our recommendations, and then we'll give you a fair warning so you can step away as needed. We're also going to be talking a little bit about Olaf's Frozen adventure. That should be interesting, as well as some movie news. But before we get to all that goodness, let me introduce you to my wonderful co-hosts. You've already heard from them, but let's officially say hello. Jim Pugliafico on the road from Orlando, Florida. Babe, you've been on the road so much lately. How are you?
I'm good. I'm here this week, but today's the first day of travel after a nice long holiday weekend break. So I was thankful for that, and now I'm back to work. Just so happens that I'm on the road this week. So I'm here in Florida. I'm glad to be on the podcast. I just made it by the skin of my teeth for the start time, so I'm happy to be here.
Well, we're happy to have you with us, babe. Welcome. And Will Lindis is here with us as well. Welcome, Will.
Hey there, Brad and Jim and listeners. I'm glad to be here too, although by here, I mean on this podcast, in my office, comfort of my own home. So glad I'm not traveling this weekend. Jim, more power to you.
Oh, boy.
Yeah.
That 4:30 wake up came early for you today, babe, huh?
Yeah, it did. It did. And, it's tough to jump right into work after after the holiday. It's our nice 4 or 5 days off, with friends and, hanging around with Brad and just watching movies, and now having to get up early Monday morning was a big slap in the face.
It was hard. It was hard for me to adjust, and my office is like 20 feet away from my bed, and this morning was rough getting back to work. So I can't imagine an early morning flight being, in your own state. Again, more power to you, Jim.
Yeah,
that's a tough turnaround.
Yeah.
Well, babe, we're very glad to have you with us, even though you are on the road. We're glad to have you here. And Will, it's good. It's good to be back with you as well. So we've got a full show. We got a lot going on. Real quick, though, just want to give a shout out. We've got some folks who are joining us in the live chat right now. Welcome back to all of you guys as well. So glad to have you with us. Don't forget to share your thoughts on anything we're talking about on the show tonight in that live chat. Or if you have questions for us, feel free to pop them in there. Can't guarantee we'll get to everybody. Sometimes that chat moves at a mile a minute. We can't always keep up, but we'll do our best, I promise. And those of you listening on digital tape delay, you may not be able to interact live right now, but keep that in mind for next Monday for our next episode. Maybe you can hop on the YouTube live cast with us. In any event, guys, are we ready to segue into some movie news? Are we there?
Oh, yeah, we're there.
Why not?
All right, then here we go. Some movie news. All right, for any of you who may be new to the Movie Rares podcast, this is the part of the show where we share with you some things that have us interested, excited, curious question mark from the film industry. Jim, you're up first. What have you got this week?
Oh, wow. I'm first. Wow. My news bit has to do with one of those movies I said we saw this weekend. And it's a movie we've been kind of anticipating seeing for a while because the buzz on this one, at least in film circles, maybe not with general audiences, has been really, really good. The name of the movie is Lady Bird. This is Greta Gerwig's latest. I don't think I can call it her first because I want to say there might have been one other film that she either directed or co-directed. I'm not sure about that.
It's her first to direct, but she's written a bunch.
Oh, okay. Gotcha. But yeah, it's called Lady Bird. It's a really, really sweet, honest, I will say, kind of coming of age teen angst movie starring Saoirse Ronan, who we saw previously in Brooklyn, a movie called Brooklyn, like 2 or 3 years ago, which we really loved her performance in that. I know she got a lot of attention for that movie, and she may get a lot of attention for this movie. But anyway, the story is that it came out today. Lady Bird, it's been carrying a 100% rating on Rotten Tomatoes. And we've talked Rotten Tomatoes, both good and bad, on this show. It's an aggregate service of, all the reviews out there, and they say, okay, they throw them into two piles, good reviews and bad reviews, and they figure out the percentage based on that. So this one's got 100%, and it's now, according to their algorithm, I guess the highest rated movie of all time. Now, several movies are at 100% on Rotten Tomatoes. However, this one is the one that it's of those movies that are at 100%. This one has the most reviews logged on the Rotten Tomatoes service. So that makes it, quote unquote, the best reviewed or best rated movie on Rotten Tomatoes. Now, does that mean it's the best movie of all time? No. Doesn't mean it's the best movie of all time. It means it's a very, very good movie. It's a movie that was liked universally across the Rotten Tomatoes set of critics, at least liked, and in some cases loved, because the way Rotten Tomatoes works, if you like a film, that basically is like 100% vote, basically. That's the way aggregate scoring works. But yeah, so that's the news. Changed in a day because there are other movies that have gone on Rotten Tomatoes at 100%, and there's always one critic out there who wants to make a name for himself and put his maybe negative review out there and kind of kill the movie's buzz. But yeah, 100% on Rotten Tomatoes. Will, I know you saw this movie. I'm pretty sure you liked it a lot. What do you think about the best reviewed movie of all time?
Yeah, I'm raving about this one. I was worried that I was going to reveal too much about it when I plugged last week, so I was like, I've got to keep it short. I love this movie, and you're absolutely right. Like, Rotten Tomatoes aggregate scoring is like a very, very specific thing. It doesn't mean it is the best movie of all time. It means a very specific set of circumstances happened. It is the most broadly favorable film rated within that system. And, there's a couple of caveats that go with it. It's overtaken Toy Story 3. It's got 169, 100%. Toy Story 3 had 163. But that has to do with at time of launch, basically. So since 2010, there's been another 130 positive reviews for Toy Story 3 that have pushed it up to 290 plus. So it's one of those things where you can look at the numbers all sorts of different ways. But the way I look at it is this. this is a movie that is maybe getting a lot of critical buzz, but is not getting as much. I mean, it's a smaller independent movie. There's no superheroes. There's no cartoon characters in this. Nothing explodes. So it's not
nothing explodes.
Yeah, for like general audiences, but it is a female directed film that is getting a lot of positive talk. And I will say also word of mouth. I've talked to a lot of people that have seen this, and I've not talked to anyone that did not have a good experience with it. And again, like, does that mean that it's the best movie of all time? No, but it's a very broadly liked film. And I think that's great. And that also means that if you are listening to this and you have not seen Lady Bird and it is playing in an area near you, maybe you should go see what all the fuss is about.
Yeah. See where it fits on your Rotten Tomatoes, personal Rotten Tomatoes score list.
Indeed. All right. Well, we'll have to see if it retains that 100%. Will, what have you got on your list this week?
Less favorable news. Yeah, but it's one of those things where it's like it's worth talking about, even if it's not exciting. So a few years ago, like 2015, Universal Studios, like the film company / they also make theme parks, inked a deal with Nintendo, and they're going to be opening up a Nintendo Land at Universal in whatever year that's going to come out. Variety reports that as of right now, because of that link, Illumination Entertainment, which is owned by Universal, Illumination Entertainment, they're the ones that did like Despicable Me, Minions, and The Secret Life of Pets. They're in talks with Nintendo right now to make the Super Mario Brothers movie. And I gotta say, I'm not very excited about this news whatsoever, mainly because Illumination Entertainment continuously disappoints me with their films. Yeah, there's been a couple that are exceptions here and there that are okay. But they've been really cashing in on this whole like let's monetize whatever like the weird little side character is, like the Minions.
Minions.
So I'm not looking forward to seeing the Mario Brothers. Like, I mean, obviously Mario is a very commercial product. Like, it's video games, it's pajamas, it's hats, it's posters, it's all sorts of things like that. But we're gonna get like Goombas or Shy Guys or something like that as the new Minions, and it's gonna annoy the fuck out of me. So that's the news that I've got. There's probably a bad, maybe not, but probably bad Mario Brothers movie coming to theaters in the next few years.
Yeah, you better get ready, Will, because I don't even think it's going to be like Goombas or Koopas in their like inherent ground-based form. I'm thinking we're going to get those fucking things on the clouds that drop the spiky shells everywhere. Like the most annoying fucking Bowser minion. That will be the minion they choose.
Yeah. Oh God. Yeah. It's going to be bastardized all the way down to its core. Like, and again, it's a very like, it's not like I have like some deep attachment with the lore of Mario Brothers, but I want to see good movies. I want to see good movies, and I especially want to see good movies made out of properties that I've enjoyed at some point in my life. And just knowing that this particular franchise could get the Minions treatment is a little bit worrisome.
I have a feeling, I don't know, that Nintendo may not be as like forthcoming with the property, given that they got to protect their IP. So they may, I don't know, they may not necessarily want to like do crazy spin-off films. Maybe it'll all stay contained to the main films. I hope. Jim, we're getting a lot of noise on your side. I know you're sorry. That's okay. I know you're working with a weird setup in the hotel.
My setup isn't optimal.
But I see, Jim, your hands on your head. What do you think of a Super Mario movie? Is that something that excites you?
No. It doesn't excite me. I mean, I know that isn't there a new Mario game out now that people are raving about, Brad? I know you've played. Is it Odyssey?
Yep. Super Mario Odyssey, yeah.
Yeah. I don't know, man. It just seems like a really overt, blatant attempt at monetizing something in a different medium that is already monetized in another medium, right? Angry Birds was one I can think of, right? That they was like an insanely popular little game, right? Little phone game or whatever it was, mobile game, and they probably made a ton of. I don't know how the money stream works on that, but they probably made a lot of money on that somehow through advertising or whatever. And then they came out with a movie. I can't speak too much on the movie because I actually never went to see that movie. But yeah, I don't know. It doesn't. And it's very ironic that we're talking about an upcoming Illuminations movie, featuring a new Pixar release on the same show. Because Illuminations are often, compared to each other as kind of on arguably parallel tracks. Trying to do the same thing, trying to put out animated movie content. I think one is vastly more successful. Well, I don't want to say successful because now if you start measuring by money, I'm not even so sure. But at least artistically, I have an opinion on whether, which movie I would see. But it's just ironic that we're talking about this. And no, I'm not excited. I'm not excited at all for a Mario movie, from Illuminations Entertainment at all.
Well, all right. Not much excitement from Jim. I can't say I'm super excited about it either. As much as I'm enjoying Super Mario Odyssey, I have a really bad taste left in my mouth from the previous Mario movies, as well as that really terrible Super Mario 3 animated series from the 90s. Well, I guess late 80s, early 90s. I don't know. I don't have high hopes, but maybe we'll be surprised.
At least the live action one. Now, don't get me wrong. The Bob Hoskins, John Leguizamo one was not good, but it was ambitious. And so there's something to be said for that. I have a feeling that you mentioned this before, Brad, like Nintendo being protective of their property, Illumination wanting to do the things that they do, quote unquote, best. I have a feeling ambitious is not the phrase we will at all use at this end product. I think it's going to be safe, and I feel it's going to be cloying.
We will have to see. Speaking of cloying, I also have some not so great movie news this week. Disney, unfortunately, has not been super positive in the news lately. We talked about the icing out of some press outlets and what was going on with Disney a couple weeks ago. New news out of Disney in regards to their very strict requirements for showing Star Wars The Last Jedi. Jim, don't worry. No Star Wars spoilers are in store. I know you're being very protective.
I may not be quite virginal, but I am almost pure. I am like 99% pure at this point.
So,
like
here's the deal. In order for venues to show Star Wars The Last Jedi, they have to fork over 65% of ticket sales back to the studio. And that's interesting because typically the studios get about 55 to 60% of ticket sales. And of course, movie theaters make up for that loss from concessions. Disney is requiring that 65% of all ticket sales go back to them for this film. Not only that, but they're also requiring theater chains to show Star Wars The Last Jedi for 4 straight weeks on their biggest screen. So what's happening is a lot of smaller town venues are finding themselves unable to show this film because they just cannot afford to tie up their biggest auditorium for 4 straight weeks and lose. I mean, 5 or 10% maybe doesn't sound like a lot, in addition to what they would normally hand over. But some of the smaller venues are saying it's just too much. They're losing too much money showing that film, even with concession sales. So we're starting to hear that some of the smaller venues have either dropped the film because they're afraid that if they don't meet Disney's requirements, which, by the way, if you don't, Disney gets to take an additional 5% cut. So they're either dropping from showing it entirely or they're showing it for a week, they're taking that extra 5% cut, and then they're ditching it from there. I'm curious what you guys think about this.
I So there's a lot of business decisions as to why they would do this. I'll start off by saying, like, whenever a company kind of flexes its muscle in this type of way, it's always a little unsettling because I fear the slippery slope, and I shouldn't, but I do. What's to keep it from being 70? What to keep it from being 75%, etc. I do know that there's some weird financial factors in play that I think pressured Disney here. The first of which is this is playing at the end of the year, which typically is a great time for people to go see movies. Like this Christmas rush is really big, but every so often, like another movie will come along that can interfere with a film's like box office push. For example, when Force Awakens played, it was around the same time that Hateful Eight and The Revenant were out, and both of those chipped away at some of that Star Wars money. I mean, it still did $1 billion. So it's like it didn't chip away too much. Mm-hmm. But I mean, when you're looking bottom line, that's something to keep in mind. So the number of screens and the percentage affects that. Star Wars also does a lot of times you talk about these like big blockbuster movies and you think, well, it'll just make its money back when it starts playing in China. And that's sort of kind of a financial thing that we talk about with blockbusters. Like, yeah, it was a flop domestically, but it'll do well overseas. Star Wars has sort of the opposite. It makes the bulk of its money in North America. And so by doing this particular push, I think they're trying to get some records. They're trying to say, hey, look at what our domestic take was. So I get why they're doing it, but at the same time, it's all very bottom line based, and there's the very, very, very tangible risk of them off-putting potential viewers and maybe stopping themselves from steamrolling the competition.
Yeah, hey Brad, I didn't get to read this article, but has there been any like orchestrated pushback from some of the bigger movie chains against this this contract or this deal?
So I read a few different articles talking about this, and I didn't see anything reported about a pushback from some of the bigger venues. I know that some of the smaller theaters, including one in one of my hometowns in the small little area I'm from, they've tried to kind of band together a little bit and ask Disney to make some concessions based on like their general annual income or something from ticket sales. But I guess Disney is not allowing them to do that. So beyond that, I'm not really sure if there's any other kind of pushback.
It's strange that they would, ask them, to keep it in a big screen for on the biggest screens, because I know at least in today's multiplexes, the bigger screens are usually the ones associated with IMAX or LIMAX or XD or D-Box or whatever you want to call it, whatever in different chains, it's different. And there's a premium price associated with those tickets. And I noticed that when reserving tickets for a movie like we did for Coco this last weekend, the ones for the smaller screens generally sell up faster than the bigger screens because of the price point. If you have a family you're bringing to the movies, it gets to be expensive at $15 to $17 a head for the big screen versus, maybe $8 or $9 for the small screen, and you get almost the same movie experience. So I don't know about this concept of forcing it onto the biggest screens and forcing it to be there. I've also gone to theaters when, Will, you brought this up before, like Revenant and other movies that I want to see on a big screen that are just as much of a visual presentation as a Star Wars movie is, they get pushed off the bigger screens. I want to see this thing on the biggest screen possible, like The Revenant or, whatever, Jackie or whatever it was. But yet it's not going to get that screen because Star Wars is now going to hog that thing up. And we've run into that before with other movies. And it's as a consumer of movie tickets, it gets to be a little frustrating.
Yeah, I don't know. We'll have to see how things go. I'm sure we'll get projected numbers and updated income and all that stuff. But I'm a little worried that other studios with big franchises may decide, in the future, or even Disney again with some of the Marvel films. We've got a new Avengers movie coming out soon. If this makes a fuck ton of money for Disney and they like this model better, I mean, we could continue to see smaller town venues get iced out. And having grown up in an area where I had to drive 30 minutes to get to a movie theater that was the only movie theater in like an hour and a half radius, I can tell you that kind of stuff is going to cut out a lot of people who might otherwise be able to see the film and create some hard feelings. So I don't know. We'll have to see.
I think the one safeguard we've got at least there is that with the superhero movies, a lot of the numbers I've seen show that at most 35 to 40% of their money is made domestic. So they can bank on a whole lot more being made overseas. The Star Wars movies have been running 50-50, which isn't the norm for these types of blockbusters. So there's something about Star Wars that does incredibly well in North America. And because, I mean, it's making billions of dollars, so it's making its money, but it's not making that to the same degree overseas. So I feel that might be such a big factor in this that it might safeguard it from spilling into like the MCU stuff and other things. That said, Wonder Woman did a 50-50 split. Like, so right. There's also the possibility that maybe that market is changing a bit. I don't know. I'm hopeful that this is not a harbinger of bad things and that this is just kind of a peculiarity with this one particular franchise, but I guess we'll see.
Indeed. So
yeah,
I feel like
that's go ahead. Sorry.
No, go ahead.
There's a delay. Sorry. No. I mean I was gonna just say as an aside, that's another whole subject, how some big franchises like Star Wars don't do so well like in some overseas markets like China and Japan and stuff. Whereas other ones that don't do well here, like Transformers, kill over there. Like they do great business over there. So that's another whole aspect of this.
Oh, for sure. Well, I feel like we need to end this segment on a high note after two semi-negative movie news bits. Jim, we were talking earlier about how you have been avoiding Star Wars spoilers, how you've only seen that first trailer. You guys, Jim does this super cute thing whenever we're at a movie now and they show something Star Wars related, whether it's a trailer or a sizzle reel, or even like Cinemark does this like, get your concessions before the movie, and it has like images and video from the film. So Jim does this sensory deprivation thing where he like plugs his ears, he covers his eyes to try and protect himself. And we were seeing a movie with our friend Adam this weekend. We went to see 3 Billboards outside of Ebbing, Missouri. And before the movie, they were showing one of those Cinemark Star Wars concession things. And Adam caught Jim in his sensory deprivation. Take a look.
Oh, my God. Nice.
So you guys were mentioning this photo, and I've been very curious to see it, mainly because there was a part of me, and granted, this is sadistic glee as I say this, but like there was a little part of me that was like, oh, wouldn't it be crazy if like we're seeing this picture of Jim covering his eyes, and in the background you see the screen, and on it is like a giant Star Wars spoiler? Like
that would be funny.
Like Kylo Ren getting cut in half.
Yeah, it's just like, I didn't want to see that. Oh no.
Well, there you have it, Jim. Your sensory deprivation pose is awesome. Adam is pointing out in the chat that you can't see it in the picture, but Jim's thumbs are plugged squarely into his ear holes to prevent any sound from seeping in.
It's a patented move that I have. I've patented this move.
It's kind of like from Pan's Labyrinth when the monster with the eyes on its hand, it just in reverse.
But you just don't want the eyes on your hand because then that wouldn't work. It's just like, right? No spoilers.
Turn around.
Damn my eye hands.
Oh, goodness. Well, guys, we've got Coco to talk about. And I also know we want to talk about the short in front of Coco. We'll have a short discussion about Olaf's Frozen Adventure. Are we ready? Are we there? Are we ready to make that transition?
Yeah,
absolutely.
All right, then, guys, just a quick reminder. We are going to talk about Coco spoiler-free. We'll give you our initial thoughts, impressions, recommendation on whether we think you should go to see the film, and then we'll give you a fair warning before we go into spoilers. With Olaf's Frozen Adventure, We'll just talk about it real quick, spoiler free as well. Don't worry. We're not going to spoil any potential goodness you could get from that. So all of that said, here we go. Our discussion of Coco and Olaf's Frozen Adventure. Hey, want to give a quick shout out. There's a bunch of people in chat. Hey, William. Hey, Sam. Hey, Steve. Hey, Adam. Hey, everybody else. I feel like I need my Romper Room magic mirror. Mike Lovins, our very own Magic Mike, says, hey, boys, watching from the tub. Mike, I think we need a picture of you watching from the tub. Just be careful if your picture-taking electronics are not waterproof when taking the picture.
Pictures didn't happen. Yeah.
Or we don't believe you. Exactly. Well, guys, let's just throw this out there, Freeform. Olaf's Frozen Adventure, real quick, spoiler-free. Was this a Frozen win for you, or was this a Frozen disaster?
Well, for me, it was neither. I was disappointed that we didn't get a Pixar short in front of a Pixar movie for the first time in, God,
forever.
I can remember. I mean, I remember the shorts like, what was it, Sandy or Sandpiper or whatever it was. That was amazingly visual. It was a really cool story with no dialogue whatsoever and some great visual storytelling with cute animals and I wanted kind of something like that, different. We've gotten all kinds of great shorts from Pixar, and usually these shorts are typically nominated for animated, best animated short form at the Oscars, and a lot of times win. But no, we've got a 21-minute long Frozen side story, I guess you could, with Olaf as the character who's front and center, not Elsa, not Anna, not Sven or Kristoff, but we have Olaf front and center, and it's got I think like about 7 or 8 new original songs, none of which I can remember a note of at this point. And it's parts of it were okay for me. Parts of it were kind of cute. There was a chase scene in the middle. I thought it was pretty well done visually. I guess it's got a cute Christmas message about the meaning of Christmas somewhere in there. But man, it was really disappointing to see this. And there's reasons why they went with this, I guess. So everybody's throwing in their 2 cents of why they think Disney did this. But that's it. That's all I'm going to say about it. I was disappointed to see that. It's 21 minutes, and that's not counting the trailers that we sat through. So if you let's say you have 15 to 20 minutes of trailers, which are typical nowadays in front of a movie like this, then 20 minutes of Olaf, that's 35 to 40 minutes you've sat in your seat at least before the main feature starts. And think about doing that in front of a kids movie with a bunch of impatient, 6 to 9-year-olds. Not that we had to experience that, but can you imagine what that experience would be like? I don't know. I just don't understand where they're going with this.
Yeah, I did not care for this very much at all either. There's a few reasons. You mentioned the length. 21 minutes for a short film before a how long is that? Before an almost 2-hour feature. That's a lot. Now, granted, if every minute of that was good quality animation and good quality storytelling, give me an 8-hour short. Air quotes. I don't care. But that's not what we had here. This reeked a lot. We mentioned Illumination before. Before every new Illumination movie, there's usually like a little Minions short, and they're always tedious. They're these little commercialized things to remind us of this product that hasn't been out in a while. But don't worry, there will be another one soon. And you sit through it, and no matter how good the movie at the other end of it is or is not, you kind of have this sour taste in your mouth. And that's what I had here. The songs were not really good. And one of the things that I think was so catchy about Frozen, it was, granted, we're probably sick of hearing them at this point. But when you first heard those songs from Frozen, they were all quite good. They were well-written songs. This was totally like B-side music. The characterizations felt a little off. Oh gosh, what's his name?
Christoph?
Christoph, yeah. Christoph felt really weird in this one. Just like they were like, oh yeah, we forgot Jonathan Groff is in this too, right? God, crap. Someone come up with a song for him to sing really quick. Yeah, this frustrated me. This bored me. This did not do what it was supposed to do. I looked to Pixar to do something innovative and creative, to just sort of put me in this like magical headspace right before one of their features starts, where I'm so in awe and I'm so enraptured that I'm ready for whatever they're about to give me. But instead, I felt like I had to slog through this before I could get to the good stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's unfortunate because I don't know. I think. All right, let me do this. Let me walk it back for a second. So, Olaf's Frozen Adventure was originally intended to be a holiday special that aired on ABC this holiday season, and for whatever reason, and rumors abound that it was because Disney Pixar maybe weren't confident enough people would go to see Coco, so they put Frozen in front of it. But for whatever reason, it ended up being a short in front of this film. And so, I think if this were a holiday special on TV and I'm clicking through channels, I'd have been a lot more forgiving. And I'm hearing Darth Vader in my head saying forgiving. But because this was in front of Coco, and Jim, you're absolutely right, because we're so used to these amazing Pixar shorts, usually in front of their films, I think this just bombed for me. You're right, Will, the music was not great. If I heard for the first time in forever, one more fucking Frozen time, I'd have been done completely with Frozen. And I love the first film. I was really looking forward to a Frozen sequel. I said on Facebook over the weekend, if Frozen Fever made me sort of want that sequel much later, Olaf's Frozen Adventures made me not want that sequel at all. I think I've backed off of that a little bit now that I've had a few days to cool off. But I just, I don't know. I think what they're doing with the Frozen IP is just not great.
So, question for you guys. So, a couple of years ago, Disney did the exact same thing, putting but this wasn't in front of a Pixar movie. This was in front of the live-action Cinderella. There was a Frozen Fever short, and that short was a lot shorter than this one, but it was actually, I thought that one was even worse than this one. If you remember, I don't know if you remember that one. But it was really bad, and a lot of people complained about that one. Would it have been better if they just kept their Frozen, advertisement shorts in front of their live action movies and kept them away from the Pixar flavor movies, or what? Or just get rid of them altogether?
So by itself, I don't necessarily have a problem with them doing the kind of the commercialized version of them. If this was a really solid, tight, Frozen animated short that had that same energy and that same punch and that same fun as the feature that, I think all three of us were very, very positive on when we reviewed it so many years ago. If you could showed me that short film, this would be completely different. To me, it's not that it's Frozen itself. It's almost like they don't have anything new to do with these characters, so they're stuck in this perpetual state of these are the characters that you fell in love with, so let's just watch them wander around aimlessly for a bit. The songs don't feel like they had any energy. The fact that we're following around Olaf to begin with, I think, is a bit of a problem, because he was a small doses side character, and that's the trajectory that we see way too many of these things. The first movie features an interesting story with this weird little quirky side character that works in small doses. And then in a sequel, or in this case, a follow-up short, that little quirky character becomes the main character, and in doing so, just drives you up the fucking wall. I did not want any more Josh Gad. I'm done with Josh Gad. There's just something about him that feels like, nothing against him personally, but just the way he's being utilized in projects is not like meshing very well with my own personal sensibilities. It's like Minions again. Remember Despicable Me? Like the Minions were these tiny characters in the background, and now they are the franchise.
Yeah.
Hi, I'm Olaf, and I'm the new stupid fucking marketing thing from Frozen.
You loved him. You loved him 2 years ago, 3 years ago. Come on.
I did, and I loved his warm hugs back then, and now he's that creepy guy that I don't ever want hugs from again.
I bet you Brad loves ice cream, but if I just shoved a gallon of it down his throat, he would probably, be
never
like,
eat it again.
I'm done with ice cream, you know?
That's probably true.
So, and that's what we're getting here. Steve in chat says they're turning Olaf into Mater from the Cars franchise.
Oh,
that's very, very fitting.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Well, guys, go ahead, Jim.
No, go.
No, go for it.
My thought was just I really hate the idea that Pixar had a short lined up for this movie, and then the marketing team jumped in and said, no, we have to put this Frozen thing in front of it. And the executives kind of shook their head and went, yes. And this other Pixar short maybe got canned. I'd like to know the story behind that. It would just make me mad, though, I'm afraid.
Well, I think it's time to get the bad taste of Olaf's Frozen Adventure out of our mouths. And to do that, I can think of only one way. So Magic Mike Levins a little bit ago said that he was watching the show from the tub, and we jokingly were like, send us pictures or we don't believe you. Well, guess what? He did send a picture, and several of you in the chat were like, yes, we want to see. So let me pull this amazingness up for you. Here's our Magic Mike Levins watching the show from the tub. Will, for those who can't see, describe what we're seeing.
Hold on just a second. My jaw hit the floor. I've got to put that back in place. Okay. Yeah, so what we are seeing right now is glorious Magic Mike. He's in his bath. We are seeing basically everything from the waist up and even a little bit of thigh there. And in the background, we see a laptop set up, and on it, we see the Movie Bears podcast. There are so many wonderful things happening in this photo, but honestly, words do them absolutely no justice. If you're listening to this on iTunes or Stitcher Radio, you're driving somewhere, remember this moment, come back to your computer, pull this up on YouTube, and just see this gloriousness for yourself.
Oh, yeah. Mike in all his like furry, chubby, awesome glory. Gotta love chubs and tubs, right?
Yes, so says my Tumblr.
All right. Well, guys, are we ready? Has our palate been cleansed? Can we talk about Coco at this point?
Let's cross over.
Sure.
All right. Jim, you seem a little downtrodden. Are you okay?
I'm good. I think I'm just tired.
All right. Well, just making sure. All right. So we're officially going to talk about Coco. Will, go ahead and kick us off if you don't mind. Very, very briefly. We don't need a ton of setup, but what is Coco, and is this worth people checking out in theaters or waiting for rentals, skipping? What's your thought?
Yeah, so Coco is the latest animated feature by Pixar. The IMDb description says, aspiring musician Miguel, confronted with his family's ancestral ban on music, enters the land of the dead to work out the mystery. This is directed by a few people, but primarily Lee Unkrich, because these always have like directors and co-directors. But the main dude on this also gave us Toy Story 3, which came up earlier in the podcast, but is also one of Pixar's like most like tear-inducing movies. And there's just something about this dude that just completely breaks my face, because Coco it's a delightful movie. It's also an incredibly affecting an impactful movie. I cried through this entire movie, and that's not spoiling anything. Normally when you hear crying, like, oh, that means something bad happens. No, like I was brought to tears by the artistry on the screen. I was brought to tears by this is a film that's very much about family and these binds that that tie us not only to the people that like we live with in our homes, but also like the people that came before them and the people that came before them, like the entire lineage. And so just that focus on that aspect of family and heritage was incredibly impactful to me. And the actual characterizations and this boy's journey through the land of the dead is incredibly affecting as well. The music in this is stellar. There are a lot of pieces that will be stuck in your brain forever, but delightfully so. But less earwormy than even something like Frozen. Like it's like there's something about these songs that feels like they may even have a little bit more staying power, like maybe a little bit more timelessness. Like I could see myself listening to "Remember Me," one of the tracks from this, years from now, and still having fond memories and not going like, "Oh God, not Elsa again." Mm-hmm. We don't have a lot of Pixar movies. Have dealt not entirely, but mostly with like inanimate objects or emotions or whatever it is, like cars or monsters or things like that as our protagonists. So we don't get a lot that actually focus on just human being characters. And the fact that we get specifically this story, which focuses very much on the land of the dead and the kind of the what's it called, Deus de los Muertos. I butchered that. I apologize. Featuring a primarily Latino or Latinx cast. I think all of that it's a pretty stellar first step forward for Pixar in kind of this particular type of storytelling. If you haven't gone and seen this movie yet, Brad said it right at the beginning of this podcast. What are you waiting for? Go see this movie right away. You will cry, you'll laugh. You're going to have all of those, just all of the, air quotes feels, but in a non-manipulative way. This movie is the goods.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely have to agree with you agreeing with me. Well, yeah, I mean, I think this movie is a slam dunk, home run, touchdown, whatever sports, analogy you want to use. This movie is it. I will say all of the songs are not as memorable as, say, something like Frozen. I think there's only a couple of songs that have really like stuck with me. Even going back and listening to the score and the original songs, I'm like, oh yeah, I really like that song. It was good, but didn't have the same kind of resonance. Like with Frozen, as frozened out as we are, there were several songs. With Moana, same thing. There's like 8 songs in that movie that I listen to on repeat every single day, probably. But this one only has a couple. But you know what? That's okay. That's okay if it only has a couple like major, crazy, amazing songs like that. The rest of the score, which, believe it or not, guys, this is scored by Michael Giacchino, who has done Star Trek and so many other things. If I didn't know that this was Giacchino, just going into the film, I don't think I would have made that connection myself. So it was pretty awesome hearing him do something so different than what's come before. But I will say, from a visual standpoint, this movie is amazing. There's so much incredible visuality. Is that even a word? I don't know. I'm making it a word. We saw it in 3D. I don't know that the 3D really added that much. There were certain scene pieces, like in the trailer, we see this one point where they're like looking at the land of the dead or land of the remembered or whatever you call it. I think I may be blending Book of Life into this movie. But there's just this amazing shot in the trailer of Miguel like looking out over this city, and it just looks incredible. In 3D, you got that depth, you got some of the cool like lighting effects were kind of like in your close field of vision while the city was further beyond. That looked really cool. Beyond that, I don't know that the 3D really added much. So we'll talk about some of the various other reasons why I loved this movie and why I think you absolutely should go out and see it once we get to spoilers, which I guess doesn't help you if you're looking for recommendations, details beyond that. But just go see it. It's good for me. Jim, how about for you?
Yeah, I'm going to join the chorus here in praise for this movie. I love this movie. A beautiful, beautiful movie from Pixar. They know how to do this type of movie right. And Will, you hit it on the head. This is probably one of the most human-centered Pixar movies that we've seen, at least in my recent memory. And there are non-humans in the movie too, but the movie is primarily about humans and human traditions, and specifically the tradition of Dia de los Muertos, and like you said, the land of the remembered and the land of the forgotten. And I learned a little bit with this movie too, which was well, actually, I take that back. I learned most of it when I watched another movie called The Book of Life right before we went to see this movie, and this movie kind of colored a lot of that in for me, and filled in some of the gaps too. Just fantastic. I mean, Brad, you mentioned the visuals. There were so many things this movie does visually that is just like the images on the screen. And I know they're, computer animated and a lot of work goes into it, a lot of processing horsepower, whatever. But some of the work they do with the virtual camera, moving the camera around. This isn't just one frame where stuff happens in the frame and then they cut to another location and more stuff happens in the frame. This camera moves in some amazing ways, and how they do that, I don't know. There was just one simple scene, and I'm not going to spoil anything, but it's near the beginning of the movie, and it's just Miguel and his guitar. And the way it moves around Miguel and the guitar playing and him moving in and out of frame is just, some of the best stuff I've seen, animation-wise in a movie, probably ever. So, yeah, I love this movie. I think people should go see this movie. If you want to show up a little late, you won't miss much in that, you could probably show up like 30 minutes late between the trailers and everything else. And
at least 21 minutes late.
At least 21 minutes late, yeah. And you can, but if you go, yeah, exactly. Yeah, I just fantastic. The song, I haven't had really time to dig into the soundtrack yet, but I do plan on doing that. I know we downloaded it. Don't make the mistake of thinking that this is just a kid's movie, because it's an animated movie and it's Pixar and it's cutesy. This is a really, this has a really universal message for all ages, and so it deals with some very grown-up things, and I don't mean like illicit or anything, but just like some very mature topics are dealt with in this, and they're handled very well. I can't recommend this movie more.
You mentioned something about the visuals, and I wanted to kind of highlight the thing that I thought looked the best in this film. When I think about Pixar movies, there's always some element that I feel like is their showcase, right? Like it's almost like, in addition to being a beautiful story, it's like what is the thing they're demonstrating? Be it the breathtaking water effects of like Finding Nemo and Finding Dory, to the like, oh, let's see how well we can make fur look in the Monsters Inc. stuff movies. And for me, what took my breath away was just the use of light in this film, especially when we're in the Land of Dead. Everything's done in these like purples and pinks and blues and oranges, and everything goes from like really darkly saturated to like very brightly highlighted in such a way that, I mean, there's a definite art style and an art direction here that makes this movie very, very, very specifically, very, very specifically within this art style. I loved watching this movie, like, not just in terms of like, I enjoyed watching this movie and seeing it, whatever, but I enjoyed like physically looking at the screen and taking in the visuals.
Definitely some 3 super huge and hearty recommends for this film for sure. Guys, how do you feel about going to Spoiler Town? Do we have much else to talk about outside of spoilers? No,
we're good.
Thumbs up. All right. Then, of course, at this point, spoilers are going to become officially fair game. If you've not yet seen Coco and you value your innocence, now is your time to step away. And maybe we'll see you at the end of the show for some quick plugs. Otherwise, you continue to listen at your own peril. I am fumbling and bumbling and awkwardly giving you time to reach for the pause button if you need it. Steve says, there's my cue. Steve, we'll see you in the future, question mark, after you've had a chance to see the film. We'll see you later. To anyone else who's got to jump off because they haven't seen it yet. If you're listening on digital tape delay, feel free to use the handy dandy time index in the show notes. Jump ahead to plugs if you like, if you want to avoid those spoilers, but they are fair and on. Guys, where do you want to start with spoilers?
Maybe just kind of a general explanation of the central premise of the movie, and that is that in this culture, it is believed that even when family members or people who are close to you pass away and die and leave this mortal plane, they go to a place called the Land of the Remembered, where as long as they are remembered by people who they knew in this life, and those people remember them as they were when they were alive, they don't fully go away. They exist in this plane called the Land of the Remembered to be later joined by family members as they die. And it's not until those people are who passed away are forgotten and there's no longer anybody left alive that remembers them, that they cross over into the land of the forgotten. Think of, for those of you who saw the movie Inside Out, we had that kind of memory bank area where like all the forgotten stuff kind of falls into this pit. It's very similar to that. So this movie is about the importance of remembering those who are in your life, in your family, your extended family, and keeping their memory alive. That's the central premise of this movie, and I thought it was portrayed beautifully in this movie.
Yeah, I want to definitely co-sign all of that. The core elements of this film really has to do with Miguel's connection to his ancestors, because he obviously has this connection to his uncles and his mother and his grandmother and his great-grandmother and all of those. But he also has this connection to a character further back in his past, which is his great-great-grandfather, who was the black sheep of the family, the guitarist who left everything behind, and because of that, music is not allowed. But as a budding musician, he feels this connection to this one particular member of his family tree, and in this particular journey to the land of the dead, he goes on a hunt for that great-great-grandfather. And I think that there's something that's sort of neat about that. I think about a lot of us have that in different ways, like this connection to some part of our lives, like whether it be like, I have German heritage or Italian heritage, or my great-grandmother was really into doing this one specific thing, and it's passed down through the line. We've got the family quilt. We've got whatever it is. These little things that are very unique to each and every family, whether it be, a cultural thing, whether it be just a kind of a smaller family tradition. Yeah. And I think that these things are so incredibly important to us, and we don't always give them enough attention. Here we've got a character that's trying to reconcile both his sense of self and his sense of belonging within that family tree, within that heritage. And I think that's so incredibly fascinating. It's so incredibly nuanced. And again, it's a rated PG kids movie, but it handles some very complex topics in a very relatable way.
Yeah, and go ahead, Brad.
No, you go ahead.
I didn't know you were. Oh, go ahead.
No, please go ahead. You're good.
Okay. Yeah, and I love the way they tied the character of Miguel, who's the central character of the story. He's a little boy around 10 years old, I guess, or 11 or 12, and his love of music that kind of propelled his story. It really did a lot of things. It so informed us about this character. They didn't have to just say, "Oh, Miguel loves music." when they showed us, they really showed us, and we believed it throughout the movie. And of course, music is such an important part of many cultures, right? And in this specific case, Mexican or Spanish culture, and that tie-in was done beautifully. I just love the way they tied in that that love of music and that character, and that propelled the story. Basically, solely on his desire to be a musician was a big part of that character. Are you on?
Am I on? I think I've got some lag going on my side, so I was letting that clear. Editing this week should be fun. I agree. I want to talk a little bit about Book of Life just for a second. Will, I know it's been a long time since you saw that movie, but we just saw it for the first time over the weekend, and the stories really deal with a lot of similar elements, as has already been mentioned. I think what makes this movie such a home run for me is that Book of Life seems to be much more of like a let's be wild, zany, crazy for the kids kind of film. And while this has some of that, it also has that like trademark, hallmark, like Pixar emotional gravitas to it, right? So while we're learning about, the culture and some of the elements that come into this, the wild, crazy, zany antics don't take away from that in this movie as they did with Book of Life. So I felt much more, resonant with sort of the story here, especially like having lost loved ones in the past. Like, not to get too maudlin, but I used to have a picture of my mom on my desk who I lost several years ago. And I actually ended up taking that picture off of my desk because it would like make me down at work. And right now that picture is put away in a closet. But like seeing this movie, I'm bawling because if the picture like isn't out on display, that loved one can't find their way back to you. And so one of the first things that I did when we got home from seeing this movie was get that picture back out and put it in a place that I can look at it every day. Beliefs, whatever, mileage may vary. Even if it's just a silly thing out of a silly cartoon, there was something resonant there that, just grabbed me. And, we talk about some of the songs. Remember Me, there's like 8 different versions of that song in the movie. The moment in the movie where Miguel comes back and he's like, got the picture of his real dad, who, we're in spoilers, it's okay, is not Ernesto, but is in fact the guy that he meets, at the beginning of his journey through the land of the remembered. He's singing to his like 95-year-old, great grandmother, to try and, who, by the way, has dementia. She is forgetting her father, which is causing him to disappear in the land of the remembered. Where they go after that, the movie doesn't really tell us. In Book of Life, there's like a land of the forgotten. I don't know if that's a made-up thing for that movie or if that's part of the culture or not. I should find out. That'll be my homework. But even though you can't see this guy disappearing anymore, you're cognizant that like every moment Miguel is like being, kept by his family away from like singing this song to his great grandma, her dad could be disappearing possibly forever. It's very poignant. And so the moment when he sings Remember Me to her, which is the lullaby her dad sang to her as a child, she comes back to life, and I'm getting misty thinking about it, but her like old weathered face just kind of like, this is maybe a bad analogy, but the sloth in Zootopia, how his face just slowly, his eyes slowly open and his smile slowly spreads. That's what happens with her old ancient, like withered tree bark like face, right? And when the light comes back into her eyes and she starts singing along and she does remember, God, guys, that just destroyed me. I was crying for a good 10 minutes. I had to sit in the dark in the credits and hope that my tears would dry before I went out into the light where people could see me.
Thank God for 3D glasses.
Oh, yeah. I saw it in 2D, so I did not have that luxury. But yeah, not a dry eye in the house. Especially with that scene. Yeah, you're right. Like there's Book of Life was a movie that touched on a very similar aspect of culture, though the story itself veers off pretty differently. Like you have about a third of a really good movie and then 2/3 of just like frenetic, sloppy craziness. And so it became like I enjoyed Book of Life, but like I'm not gonna recommend anyone go see it right away, anything like that. But while we're on the subject of Book of Life, I do want to like raise a quick pet peeve that I've heard that's sort of hit me recently. I've heard people saying, oh my God, do we really need another of these movies? Didn't we just have Book of Life? So not just comparing the two, because obviously there's comparisons to be made, but saying that one is copying the other. And I think that's like, we're going to get how many slasher movies have come out this year? Like how many Christmas specials, like how many different things. We have literally 2 animated movies about this one specific thing. To me, that's not oversaturation. So there's all of that. Like, I just wanted to make sure I got that out of the way, because it is just like, come on, guys. We can enjoy both.
That was there. I mean, when this trailer first came out for Coco, and the idea and the trailer came out, it wasn't that long after Book of Life was already out. And so I think there may have been some confusion on people's parts, like that had known that Book of Life was out there and said, wait a minute, didn't we just see that movie? Like, is this a different movie? It seems very similar. They're both animated. They're both about, they both have Dia de los Muertos, concepts and ideas. But the movies are very different. And I was noticing, I'm glad I saw Book of Life first. Book of Life is not a bad movie by any stretch of the imagination. It's a fine movie, but it's a different movie than Coco is. I mean, it's got a different tone, totally different approach. Book of Life is more of kind of an adventure comedy, if you want to call it that. Its main driving story is this love triangle between 2 dudes and this woman, and it's kind of a rivalry story, and there's evil, there's evil villains throughout it, and it's fine. But the one thing I said when I saw that movie was like, my God, there was so much stuff crammed into that movie. None of it had a chance to breathe or sink in. I couldn't tell you any of the characters' names or motivations after the movie. It needed room to breathe, and Coco had that in spades. I mean, those guys at Pixar, I mean, they don't just know how to draw stories, they know how to tell stories. And Will, we talked about Brad, I think you brought up the last scene when Miguel comes back and he sings the song "Remember Me" to his great-great-grandmother and gets her to sing the song also. We could see that scene coming 5 minutes before it happened.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Right?
Totally.
Did that diminish its effectiveness at all? None.
Not in the slightest.
That is fantastic storytelling. You know the story's coming, but you want to hear it, and you have the same reaction as if you really didn't know it was coming. It's beautiful.
There are a few beats like that. There are, in addition to that, but the reveal that Hector is the father, not Ernesto, and just all of those things. Like, unless this is your first time to ever see a movie ever, you're gonna anticipate every single one of those things within the first like 20 minutes of this movie. But they are executed so expertly that you don't care, and that's the make of a good movie. Like, I only have a problem with films telegraphing when it's telegraphed poorly and then it's a poor film, and so then you have to just sit through the slog waiting for the inevitable reveal. But in a movie like this, it's a delight sitting through every moment. I think about this movie obviously there's the comparisons to Book of Life that we talked about, but in terms of tone and story, I think that the movie I would pair this with as a double feature, Kubo and the Two Strings. Between the relationship to family, the relationship to fathers, and the kind of the musical threads that weave through this young boy's adventure. I think the two stories have a lot of synergy.
Yeah, definitely. definitely. And they're both, great examples of good storytelling with good characters, ones that we care about. So yeah, I agree with that.
Indeed. It's interesting again on the Disney front with these two movies. We won't go too deeply into it, but Disney actually tried to trademark Dia de los Muertos back in 2013. Before Book of Life came out, they're already starting work on Coco and thinking ahead. I had not realized until Felipe from Real Comics Podcast, who we saw this movie with, he and his new wife, Susie. Congratulations again to you two. He had mentioned the controversy, so I was doing some research on it. And yeah, Disney totally tried to trademark the name Dia de los Muertos. And I don't know how I feel about Disney totally trying to trademark like someone else's holiday just for their movie. It kind of leaves a sour note in my mouth.
That's insensitive. Like, it was a bad move. Like, I get what they were trying to do. Like, that was originally going to be the title of this movie before Coco. That was what they were going to call it. And so when you have a new idea for a movie, I'm going to trademark the name of my movie so that I can keep making my movie. I get all of that, but at the same time, someone should have said, "Hey, wait a minute. Wait a minute. This is not the phrase to trademark." Like, it's not going to look very good for us if we do this.
Yeah, that'd be like if Disney wanted to make a Hanukkah-themed film and just called it Hanukkah, or a Christmas-themed movie and just called it Christmas and tried to trademark Hanukkah.
And trademark the concept of Hanukkah or of Christmas. Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things where it's like you sometimes have to like look not just at like what's the obvious title and what's the the traditional play when we've developed our title, but to think just like a couple of steps ahead. Like, obviously, I think the name of Coco is actually the best possible name, because Coco, and I kept thinking this all through the movie, like, why is this name Coco? Why is this name Coco? But it really hit me at a certain point. Coco is the one character that most directly links Hector and Miguel. Even though they meet, she is the one who, based on her memory or based on these different things, is sort of allowing them to kind of exist in the space that they are. She is the glue that holds every part of their family and every part of their story together. And so I love this as the movie title. And I'm so much happier that it's this and not Dia de los Muertos as a trademark concept.
I was hoping to see a crossover character, you guys, running around in the land of the remembered. We didn't get it that I know of, but do you know who I was hoping to see?
Who's that?
Bing Bong. I was hoping to see him walking around the land of the remembered. How cool would that have been?
Disney Pixar is famous for putting Easter eggs from other movies in their movies. So I wouldn't be surprised if somewhere in the movie, off in a corner somewhere, was a reference to a character from Inside Out or some of their other movies.
Yeah, that would be awesome.
There's always that article that's like, here's the 27 Easter eggs that you missed. And I haven't read that article yet. I need to look for it. It's always a good read.
It's out there, I'm sure.
Pixar put Easter eggs in their movie. You won't believe what happened next.
Movie news.
Oh, I'm going to click 27 times through this slideshow.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, guys, any final thoughts on Coco before we move on to some quick plugs?
Bring a tissue. Like, bring a bunch of tissues. You will cry.
Yeah. I mean, I cried like 10 minutes into the movie. So, and several times, even before the couple of big emotional moments in the movie.
Me too. Mine was about the 10-minute end mark. There's something about a right around that time, not like an obviously manipulative scene or anything like that, but about that point, I'm just like, oh shit. Already? No. This movie's still got 90 minutes left. Oh, God. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Indeed. All right. Well, Coco is a hell of a film. Make sure go out and see it. Last question. Jim, has Coco potentially cracked into your top 10 of the year?
No.
I think there's a good chance for me.
I was looking at my top 10 of the year list earlier today, and this year is, and we say this a lot of times, this year is particularly competitive for me. I don't think this one's going to crack my 10 or even my 20. That doesn't mean that it's like not a superb movie.
Yeah, I think for me, I haven't done my stack up yet, but it feels to me like it could be a top 10 movie. We'll have to see when everything settles out. There's still some movies left to come, and I can't speak on those yet. But of the ones we've seen, I think this one could definitely be in there.
All right. We'll have to see how things shake out. Yeah, for me, I mean, it was really good, guys. I don't know if it'll necessarily make the top 10 list. My gut check answer is yes, because only a couple other movies have made me, as William put it in the chat, ugly cry this year. Usually that's my barometer for top 10 films. But I would say this is definitely in the running. Whether it just makes it onto the list or gets edged out, I mean, we'll see how the final stack up shakes out. But again, agreed, even if it's not in my top 10, this is definitely a must-see movie of 2017 for me. So
totally
good stuff all around. Well, guys, let's wrap up with some quick plugs. I want to plug actually an event that's happening at the Loft Cinema on December 14th. It's a Thursday. It is also the night that Star Wars premieres. So, Jim, this is going to be like last year, a bit of a tight, scuffling from engagement to engagement. But every year, the Loft Cinema, which is our local independent theater, does this amazing holiday video clip sing-along thing where they show like music videos for like Wham's Last Christmas, Mariah Carey's All I Want for Christmas Is You, Muppets Christmas stuff, Grinch Who Stole Christmas, and everybody gets like glow sticks. Oh, I actually still have these from last year. You get like a glow stick and some little bells, and you just get to sing along to all these songs in a crowd of like 300 people. There's boozy eggnog. There's ugly sweaters. There's something in here for everyone. It's not just Christmas songs. There's Hanukkah. There's Charo. There's so many wonderful things. So we're going to be putting together probably a group outing to the Loft's holiday sing-along. So if anyone is in Tucson or in Phoenix and interested in coming down, let us know. But definitely, that's coming up in just a couple weeks. Can't believe how quickly this year is going. So if that sounds like fun to you, let us know. We'd love to have you along. That's my plug for this week. Jim, what have you got?
Yeah, good one, Brad. I am really on a roll with good movies lately. I mean, this weekend we've caught up on a whole bunch. We mentioned, of course, we talked about Coco, 3 Billboards. Will, I think you plugged that one on the show before, if I'm not mistaken. Lady Bird we've talked about. A movie called Good Time that I'm halfway through. That's another one. And one that I want to plug called Score. I was surprised. This is a 2016 movie. This is a documentary. It's called A Film Score, a film music documentary. And this is about how composers put music to films. Some of the classic composers, film score composers. Of course, John Williams, Danny Elfman, Hans Zimmer, Quincy Jones. It's Trent Reznor and Atticus. What's his last name? Ross. Atticus Ross. It's a fascinating look at how the process works of putting music to movies and how they influence the final product. How the directors work with the composers, the person scoring the film, and it talks about some of the classic scores. Star Wars, E.T., Jurassic Park, Lost Ark. I mean, some really great stuff in here. If you get a chance to see it, it's available on like iTunes, Amazon, Vudu, I think, for rent for like $4 or $5. It's well worth it if you love music, love movie music in particular. It's called Score, a film music documentary. Check it out.
All right. Awesome, Jim. Thanks so much. Will, close us out. What have you got?
Yeah, so the movie that I recently caught up with is one that you all can catch up with right away, assuming you have a Netflix account, and you probably do, or know someone that does. It's this movie that's recently been released on Netflix called Mudbound. This is it's a period drama from kind of like World War II, so like kind of like the 1940s in general. You've got these two different families, one white, one black, in a farm on rural Mississippi, and they're having to deal with obviously like racial tensions and things like that between them. One owns the land, one is working on the land for the other. But it all kind of comes to a head as a son from each of the families goes off to war, comes back home, and befriends one another. And that's sort of where the central drama of this film comes from. It is an incredibly moving and effective film. It's about 2 hours and 15 minutes long. And maybe the first few minutes of it, like you're going to be getting used to like, oh, I'm watching a period piece, you know, it's a slow moving drama. But by about the, you know, kind of the third of the way into the movie and thereon, it trucks along really well. Great acting, especially Carey Mulligan's in this, and she is just top notch. Jonathan Banks, who, I don't know if you guys are familiar with him, he's on Community, and oh yeah, I mean, probably most foremost, he was on Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul as Mike.
Mike Ehrmantraut.
Yeah. So he's in this, just playing this old racist dude. Yeah, this is a really, really good movie. One that I strongly recommend people watch. It's called Mudbound. It's on Netflix. Check it out.
And it's also on my iPad for one of the flights on this trip.
Ooh, excellent.
Yeah, I'm going to catch up with that one. Thanks, Will. Yeah, that one's been on the radar, and I know it just recently popped up into Netflix.
There's something kind of like, I know that it sucks to miss like the theatrical experience, like with some of these Netflix films like this or Okja, where it's just like they just pop up on Netflix without a real theatrical run. That said, like, this is a very competitive time of year film wise, like in terms of just like, what am I going to go into the theater and watch? When am I going to find the time? So being able to just kind of watch this in the margins in my own home, freed up a slot for me to see something else in the theater. So I don't know. It's been kind of a net positive for a Netflix positive.
Positive.
Saw what you did there. Well,
yeah. I'm not proud of it, but I did it.
All right. Very cool. Well, guys, this show has run long. Jim, I know you're on East Coast time right now, so it's late and you've got an early morning. So we're going to quickly tie a knot on things. Jim, where can folks find you if they want to interact online?
Find me on Twitter at JJP Out West, all one word, JJP OUTWEST. Also find me on Facebook under my name, Jim Pugliafico.
All right, awesome. Will, how about you?
You can catch me on Twitter at Whatever Cove. You can find me on Facebook. I'm William Lindis. Just send me a message first so I know that you're a real human being and not a bot. You can also find me on Letterboxd, where I rank all of the films that I watched throughout the course of the year. My 2017 profile is up, so there's a lot of cool thing there, including like my current top 20 list and lists from festivals I've seen. So join me on Letterboxd so we can talk about movies together.
All right, awesome. And you can find me on Twitter. If you're watching live, you can see it in my screenshot below at iBradPro on Twitter. Find me on Facebook. Just look for Brad Harris. I'm the one with Bear, Chub, Chaser, Otter, whatever other label there is out there. Friends in common with you. Would love to hear from you. So feel free to say hello. Guys, this has been a fun show. Jim, thanks so much for joining us from Orlando. Will, of course, from Austin. Big thanks to everyone who's been with us in the chat tonight. Steve and William and Sam and Mike Levins and Bobby and everybody else. It was great hanging out with you guys. We will see you all next week. Goodbye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye-bye.